This is in continuation of the series basically aimed to follow the line which our renowned teacher Professor Abidi once set up, to work in the various fields related to Persian language, not only the literature. As Persian has been source language for variety of the subjects, covering history of not only the master literary pieces, but also other fine arts, architecture, medicines, even veterinary sciences. We had till now good number of lectures, including on science, like on horses, astronomical sciences, and it is in the continuation of the same. Today we have Dr. Swapna Liddle, an art historian, striving for the conservation of our heritage. On this occasion, I welcome our respected President, Janab Shahid Mehdi Sahab, former Vice Chancellor Jamia Islamia, former Vice President ICCR, and many other distinguished positions, including the position he had in United Nations. Similarly, I am also honored to chair this session with my senior colleague, Professor Shahid Amin Sahab, a renowned historian of early and modern India, in fact, worked a lot on the various aspects of last century onwards, 19th especially. Similarly, I not only welcome and say thanks to the host, Janab Farid Asr Sahib, who is not only cultural counselor here, patron of art and culture of Iranian studies, Persian language and literature. This is the second lecture under his patronage in this building. Professor Abidi's foundation is sincerely grateful and thankful to him. Similarly, I also convey my sincere thanks, not only welcome, to Dr. Kahraman Suleimani, Director, Markaz-e-Tehqiqat, Research Center in this premises. A good number of research works are being published under his supervision, especially recently the Majalla-e-Tehqiqat, which came out. We have a very good audience from the various institutions, scholars. दिल्ली के न थे कूचे और आके मुसाविर थे, जो शक्ल नजर आई, तस्वीर नजर आई। ये चिरागी दर इन खाने कैस पारतोइया इन दरबाबे शहर दिल्ली होते। ये चिरागी दर इन खाने कैस पारतोइया हर कुजमी नगरी अंजुमन साख्ते। Before I invite Madam Swapna for the lecture, with very heartfelt condolences, I also inform, and many of us know, the sad demise of the two dear students of Professor Abidi. One, Dr. Yusuf Saab, and other Dr. Mahmood Fayyaz. Both were students of Professor Abidi, and both were teaching in Zakir Hussain College evening for long periods, and Dr. Mahmood Fayyaz was student of Dr. Yusuf also. It's a big loss to Persian world of India especially. Both had left a good number of works, and apart from that, we also feel sorry for their survivors and family members. Madam Swapna has done a lot of work on the cultural history of Delhi, and this is her PhD. This is also an event today. Both chair and the speaker are from St. Stephen, speaking on Delhi College. I remember Delhi College came into existence not as a college, an alma mater of mine also. Today I am here only due to my alma mater. And last week I was working with one American student, Jake Benson, who is working on the Delhi Literary Society and the lecture of series which they used to have till 1914, even through the Shafiq Memorial Society. Some lectures are published even by Pyarelal Ashok Sahab, the work which was published by Imam Sabri later on, Imdad Sabri. Here we have a number of other senior colleagues and teachers also from that college. I can name Dr. Shamiul Siddiqui, who has been my teacher also from the same college. Madam Swapna has been, as per the Supreme Court's directory I saw, on the misuse of the 15th century Gumti of Sheikh Ali, which is being illegally being used by Defense Colony Officers Association, and a full report she had published how the damage is done to this historical site. This is the active role of our many, very few, in fact not many, academicians who not only work in the research area, but they also try to implement the old heritage also, and she has done really good work. Her books, The Broken Script, a transition period from Mughals to East India Company, the changes they made, especially in Red Fort building, many which now one can see, as earlier it was under the Ministry of Defense, one could not see. And I hope many trunks which are full of the documents still lying in Red Fort will be opened. I got opened one trunk in 2021 as I had to put up an exhibition on the documents in Tashkent. One document of 1 by 1.5 meter issued in 1829 by Akbar II in favor of James Skinner's Patta.
That fellow.
That is lying beneath almost 40 documents in a trunk which is opened after 60 years. So this kind of a heritage we have. Abundance is also a curse, and that what we face today in our historical things. Similarly, like in National Archives, you will find more than 16,000 documents, not catalog, but to speak of their translation or what that. And that includes letters of Maulana Azad. Many people worked. I wish they would have listed those documents. Like one letter for Ramanujan, file was sought from Madras port, and Maulana Azad's handwritten note is there. Get this file, preserve it in National Archives, and the word is written as his signature, Azad, not Azad. 5th September 1950. So fortunately we have, inverted commas, abundance of the material, but very few to take care of that. We are grateful that Madam Swapna accepted our invitation to deliver her lecture on Delhi College. Before that, our Shahid Mehdi Sahab, I think it's later on, I'm sorry. I request Madam to deliver her lecture.
Professor Chandrasekhar, thank you so much for your very kind words, and I am immensely grateful to the Professor Abidi Memorial Society for giving me this honor of having me here, which is in the memory of such a profound scholar, and whose contributions are, of course, incomparable, and for having given me this chance to speak about the history of a city that I love so much, and also, of course, speak specifically of a college that, an institution that is so intimately connected with the city's past as well as present. And I'm very grateful to Iran Culture House, which has hosted this, and I hope that this will be of Delhi College, which had a long history of the teaching of Persian, will have some connection with what I say today, even though my talk is not on Farsi at all, but at least some connection might be seen. So I decided today to talk about the Delhi College, and this is a college which it's had many avatars, but the avatar that I'm speaking of this particular institution is the college that was established in 1825, and for all practical purposes in that particular form was finished in 1857. So it's a very short period, but it had a very profound impact on for what we see as, in many ways, markers of colonial modernity in North India. A little bit of political background, just in case people may not be aware. In 1803, the British East India Company had begun to rule Delhi. The Mughal emperor was simply sitting in the Red Fort. In the initial years, the East India Company's government put him up as a sort of a puppet and ruled in his name, but very soon they dispensed with that also. And they were the ones who were directing affairs in the city and ruling it de jure as well as de facto, really, for all practical purposes. So what happens in 1825 which makes them set up a college? The college is set up in a building that was a campus that had been an old madrasa. I'm not going to go into the history of that madrasa because really the college is not connected to that. The history of the college is very separate from that of that other institution, so I'm not going to talk about that. But what happened in 1823 was that the Bengal presidency set up something called the General Committee of Public Instruction. And it decided that one of its duties, as now having become the ruler of large parts of North India and Bengal, the Bengal presidency, so to speak, that it needed to do something to foster education in its territories for the general public. And as part of those deliberations, it was decided that colleges would be set up in various places. Delhi was one of those places. They are talking of mostly of higher education at this end, and it's the Delhi College. Now this, for those of us who've studied history in schools will remember that whole Anglicist Orientalist debate in education in British India, which was that should the British talked a lot about whether education should be in the languages that were in India, classical languages. Nobody thought of teaching things, spoken languages. Nobody thought of teaching Bengali or Urdu and all that was not. You learned, if you went to a college or a school, you learned the classical languages. You learned Farsi, you learned Sanskrit, you learned Arabic. So those were the languages that were. So the question that was being debated was, should we encourage the teaching of these languages and the literatures and the knowledge systems that were connected to these languages to the people of India? Or later the Anglicists come up with this idea that no, it should be the language and the language that is English and all the literatures and the knowledge of the Western world of Europe that should be taught. But this debate, the Orientalist versus Anglicist debate, is a little bit in the future. At this point in 1823, the understanding is what we later call Orientalist. The idea that a higher education institution should be teaching the people. Again, they are looking at the elite only. This is not primary education or anything. This is not general education. This is for the elite, that they should be taught in the classical languages. And there was this understanding, of course, that you should introduce subjects that are Western, in the Western sciences, geography, history, political economy, these kind of things should be taught. So-called Western learning should be taught and also as they say, but primarily the emphasis should be on the classical languages and classical literatures. So this is the idea behind the setting up of the college in 1825. It is set up in the Ghaziuddin Madrasa. Mainly the idea being that this will give it some sort of legitimacy in the eyes of the people of Delhi. They will see a sort of, even though it is not a continuation of that older institution, it will give them the feeling that it is a continuation. So this is how this is set up. And we know quite a lot of, there has been enough written about it, and it's as it develops in the future, which is as a place where the classical languages are taught. Very soon after, and of course, then you have other subjects taught initially. But before I come to that, very soon after it is opened, 25 it is opened, 1827, a proposal comes from Delhi. This time the proposal is not coming from Calcutta, it is coming from inside Delhi. Let's add an English class to it. And though this, so this is put up in the local committee in Delhi, which committee consists of the highest British officials in Delhi. So they say that let us put up an English class. And my feeling is that to some extent that push to start an English class may have come from some of the, shall we say, the service and literary elite of Delhi itself. Some of that may have come from that. Delhi had already a very long history as a center of learning. And we are talking not only of Mughal times, but we are talking about a period that lasted through the 18th century, when you have a sort of a breakup in many ways of the Mughal polity in the second half of the 18th century, the focus shifting to Calcutta. In fact, there were literary figures from Delhi who then went even to the Fort William College, and which was a British institution in Calcutta, and they became teachers there. There were people from Delhi who were participants in and the early diplomatic missions, diplomatic exploratory spy missions sometimes, which the British used to send out, say to Central Asia, to Tibet, and all of those. So you have figures like Khwaja Farid. Khwaja Farid was Sir Syed Ahmad Khan's grandfather, his Nana. He was sent on a mission to Ava and to Iran. And there was Mir Izzatullah, who was sent again to Turkestan, etc. So you have these kind of figures who were essentially from Delhi. They belonged to the literary elite of Delhi, who had their strength was they were well connected politically, and they were also very proficient in Farsi, which is something that the British didn't have. So it was these, in British records they are referred to as munshis, but basically these are the people who lead these missions, because the British don't have those capabilities to be able to be diplomats in these areas. It is the munshi who is the diplomat. So people like Khwaja Farid, Mirza Izzatullah, there are many others also, who in this early period, late 18th century, early 19th century, they are beginning to play these roles. And so Delhi already had this tradition of learning, and wherever you have traditions of learning, people want to learn more. People are not, I think it is quite likely that the push to introduce English as a language also came from within the people of Delhi, because it certainly didn't come from Calcutta. It was coming from, the impetus was from Delhi. And they decided to introduce English also into this institution. In 1828, for the first time, an English class was introduced. And the interesting thing that happens is we have some numbers of the numbers of students over there. There were about, I think, a total of 200 students at this stage. And as soon as the English class opened, a lot of particularly the Delhi students, they quickly moved from the Persian and Arabic classes to the English classes. Because I think as far as Farsi and Arabic were concerned, there were other institutions teaching those languages and teaching the literatures associated with those languages. So what students, more specifically their parents, thought that learning English in the Delhi college, at that time it was called the Sarkari Madrasa. It was called the Sarkari College, not the government college. And at that stage, the feeling was that the whole purpose of going to the government college is so that you can learn English and then you can probably get a good job. So that was that kind of, ambition was very much a part of the reason why the English class became popular. But as we go along, we find a very interesting feature that develops in what happens with the rest of the Bengal presidency is that very soon the Anglicists who I had mentioned, they take over the direction of the way, the direction that education would take, which is teaching in the higher institutions in English and teaching so-called Western subjects. And that change happens, it's Macaulay and Trevelyan, etc. I won't go into that debate. But what specifically happens in Delhi is something a little different, because Delhi is one of those institutions, unlike say similar institutions like the Agra College. Delhi is one institution where Western learning continues and grows, and there are all sorts of curriculum is very interesting, scientific, modern science, etc., but through the medium of Urdu, and with at the same time the teaching of the classical languages. So you have Farsi being taught, you have Arabic being taught, you have Sanskrit being taught, and of course English is taught. So what happens is that you have classes where a student who joins will will read one of the classical languages along with a set, with a curriculum which is has science and political economy and law and maths and whatever taught through the medium of Urdu. And then you have the English institution, which is a part of the same Sarkari Madrasa, the same government college. There's an English institution where English is taught and where these subjects are taught through the medium of English as well. And in fact, as time went on, a lot of people who were learning the classical languages also decided to study English. Now, why does that happen? How does that particular model get implemented? Why does it get implemented? Why does the government not, once they move to the Anglicist, when they are convinced of the merits of this Anglicist argument, why do they still continue the classical languages? And there the answer lies in a very interesting part of the history of this college, which is the so-called Fazl Ali bequest. Fazl Ali Khan, he was Wazir of the Nawab of Awadh, and he decided, this was sometime in the late 1820s, just as the college was being founded, he decided that he wanted to, he was from Delhi, and he decided that he wanted to bequeath the sum of 1,70,000 rupees, you can imagine it's a big sum in those days, to the cause of education in Delhi. And he told the government that I am willing to pay this amount and please invest it in government bonds, and the sum can be used for education to establish an institution. And at that stage, the government told him that actually maybe not a separate institution, but if you are willing to fund the Oriental studies in this particular institution, that would be useful. So there are a lot of ups and downs that happen, but Fazl Ali Khan, though he passes away in 1830, his heir Hamid Ali Khan then administered this fund and made sure that it was administered in a manner that would continue to support the study of Farsi and Arabic in the college, and made sure that therefore this Oriental part of the college would survive, because the British administration actually was quite underhand. They wanted to quietly, sort of have this naam ke vaste ye chal raha hai, but appropriate the funds to the English institution. But Hamid Ali Khan particularly repeatedly writes to them, says, I'm going to take back the money unless you do this. So they then decide that yes, they will keep this Oriental section going, and that is the key to the survival and flourishing of the Oriental section within the Delhi College, which then produces a lot of interesting results, because there is this Oriental institution where teaching is going to happen through the Urdu medium. One of the things that happens is that you need translations, because if you're going to teach things like Western geography and economics and all of that, you need to translate books in the first instance. So a huge translation program is launched in Delhi under the Vernacular Translation Society, it is called. And so a translation program begins, which is centered in the Delhi College. And many of in fact, some of the students who graduate from the English class then become the translators of a lot of English works into Urdu, because that is the medium of instruction. They become now. What are the where does this all then? What are the implications? What are the results of this kind of education that is implemented in the Delhi College? Who are I will of course I will talk at one level there are very well-known figures among the faculty. There is, you have Mamluk Ali, who teaches Arabic. There is Imam Baksh Sehbai, who teaches Farsi. And these are teachers who carry on the tradition of learning in these languages and their associated literatures in the Delhi College. But also at the same time, you have people who are a little skeptical about the rest of the curriculum. Okay, you are, because what is happening in the Delhi College with particularly under the formative, the initial years actually are ones which are a little chaotic, but by the 1840s, a curriculum is being implemented properly in a more thought out manner. And the person behind that is somebody who is of Egyptian origin, Felix Boutros. He is French speaking also, but of course he is well versed in the so-called classical languages of Farsi and Arabic, and he is the one who in a more systematic manner implements this curriculum, where he says that the idea is to have a Western education. That is the hallmark through these translations. So that idea that you will continue the study of classical languages in a manner that is divorced from the knowledge systems which accompany these languages. Now that is something that is interesting, because it is different. It's different from the way, because any other institution that in Delhi, for instance, which are teaching these languages are also teaching the associated knowledge systems. And that is what Boutros decides to separate out in the Delhi College, which is to separate, teach these languages just as languages. And the knowledge systems will be there of the so-called the Western knowledge systems. So this is the kind of way in which it goes. Not everybody is convinced of the wisdom of this kind of education. There is this very interesting Altaf Hussain Hali, when he writes about his early days in Delhi, he says that we used to consider the students of the Delhi College as Jahil. He says that these are ignoramuses, they are ignorant. You have one person who is a member of the managing committee eventually, Sadruddin Azurda. He's a mufti. He's actually he becomes a Sadr Amin. He's a judicial officer in the British Judicial Service, British Indian Judicial Service. He's a official there, and he becomes he's also a very well-known scholar. So he becomes a part of the managing committee, and he actually, what he does is he founds a madrasa of his own. He founds a madrasa of his own, and clearly it's a way of kind of at one level saying that I'm not convinced with the wisdom of this kind of education that the Delhi College is promoting. Anyhow, that is another matter, but I will get down to I'm not going to go into that side of the people who are skeptical about this kind of education, but I will stick to those who are actually products of it. And one of the products of it, and when we talk about the impact of this kind of education, one of the early products of this is somebody like Muhammad Baqir. Muhammad Baqir is taught he studies Arabic. The Arabic language, and of course he has the regular curriculum, but this in the early years of the college, and he then goes on to, he joins government service as a rishtadar, and then he becomes, he's eventually the person who goes and becomes he becomes the editor of the Delhi Urdu Akhbar, and he's very well known for his editing of that Akhbar during the revolt of 1857. But So he is one of the people. Another early product of this school is Mohanlal Kashmiri. Mohanlal Kashmiri is a very interesting man also because he is, he again, he is the guy who went to, he's part of the great game of the British in Afghanistan. And that debacle that happens there, it's chaos. And he then wrote his account of what had happened in Afghanistan, and he's very critical of the British, what he considers British mismanagement of that whole affair. So he was in this college just for 3 years, and he goes on to do this. What is happening here is that at least this generation, this early generation of products of this college, it's not as if the college really transforms them in some way. It doesn't. Mohanlal Kashmiri has a long history as he's grounded in what were previous educational institutions. He spends only 3 years in the Delhi College. What it does is it gives, through the learning of English, it eventually gives him the ability to write and address an audience that is different. So he can address English-speaking readership, and it gives him access to a different kind of public sphere than not knowing English would have put him in a different place. From the later period, you have people like Master Ramchandar. Master Ramchandar again is a very interesting figure who is, he studies in the English class. He is a mathematician who joins the college as faculty as well. And what is special about Master Ramchandar is that he does original work in mathematics. His book, which is Problems of Maxima and Minima. And this is an interesting book because it attempted to solve calculus problems through the use of algebra. And there's an article that there's an essay that has been written by Professor Irfan Habib and Irfan Habib and Dhruv Rana on this, on Professor Ramchandar and his mathematical work, and how that also is, in some senses, it's a very interesting pedagogical proposition that you teach something which is again coming, which is not that, which is a little unfamiliar, which is calculus, through making it legible and intelligible through systems of knowledge that may be more prevalent, more familiar. So that is the original work that he does, which again, his ability to do this work, to publish it in English, ensures that it gets familiar, it becomes familiar in Britain. It's published in Britain. Augustus de Morgan, who's a professor of mathematics in the University College London, he reads it, he is impressed with it. But Master Ramchandar does something different also, which is he's very involved in the translation program, and he works to popularize science through the medium of Urdu. So what he starts doing is he is very involved in the college magazine. The college brings out a magazine which talks not only of science, but it talks of current affairs and all sorts of things, other subjects also, but he brings out 2 other magazines also. This is the college magazine is Kirano Sadain. Then the other magazines that he brings out are Fawaidun Nazarin and Muhibbe Hind. And they all talk about not only subjects that are history, science, current affairs, biography. There is social issues are also raised. He criticizes, for instance, religious. One of his very controversial things is he criticizes explanations of the natural world which are given by the Pandits. and Pandits give these very unscientific explanations for natural phenomenon. So he criticizes those as far as, and he criticizes the literary culture. He talks about how these Farsi walas, he calls them, you know, their style of writing is not simple, and they confuse a lot of, you know, they get so caught up in writing this flowery language that they have obscured true knowledge. So he's a critic of many of these things also. So he, in many ways, is inaugurating a more rational, I mean, he professes a more rational attitude, but also more importantly, he is one of the proponents of a simple style of writing in Urdu. And this is the style of writing which Muhammad Baqir also follows in the newspapers, in the newspaper that he edits. And of course, the whole style of the Delhi Urdu Akhbar, in any case, is fairly straightforward. So, whether it is popular writing in Urdu, there is through the science magazines, science and other magazines that are coming out, whether it is the newspaper, and newspaper again is, people like Muhammad Baqir are talking about social reform, they are talking about the need to cut down expenses in weddings, they are talking about widow remarriage. All of these issues are being raised in the newspaper. So this is the kind of role that alumni of the Delhi College are playing. There are also, there's people like Karimuddin. Karimuddin is a very interesting man. He is, he's from Panipat. So obviously from surrounding towns also people used to come to study in the Delhi College. Karimuddin is from the Oriental section. He's from the Oriental section, and he does something very interesting, because there is, of course, he does all sorts of translations. Again, he sets up a printing press. He, I'll give the example of one interesting thing that he does, which is quite, I think, as far as I know, fairly path-breaking, which he decides to do a mushaira, which is, I think of it as a print mushaira. And the reason I think of it as a print mushaira is because he wrote a tazkira also. He wrote a tazkira, and in the introduction to that tazkira, he talks about this mushaira. You know, you must have read this many of you must have read this very famous book by Mirza Farhatullah Beg called Delhi Ki Aakhri Shama, Delhi Ka Ek Yadgar Mushaira. And that is actually based on the story of Karimuddin. But the way that fictional, somewhat fictionalized account is written actually obscures what is really interesting about Karimuddin's mushaira. Because Karimuddin's mushaira is like no other mushaira. Because what he does is he is motivated by a desire to make his printing press succeed. He sets up a printing press which is doing badly. So he wants to, and the secret to the success of every print endeavor is to print a good amount of poetry in that era. The akhbar prints poetry, even Ramchandra's science magazines also publish poetry, because they can be sure that if poetry chhapoge to wo bikegi. So what they do is, so this man, Karimuddin, decides that he wants to publish a fortnightly issue which covers poetry. And the way he wants to do it is he wants to hold a mushaira. He takes a house on rent. ये एक गली शाहतारा के पास एक हवेली है, अजीजाबादी की हवेली, I think, अजीजाबादी हवेली, अजीजाबादी, गली शाहतारा. It's really close to what used to be Kamaruddin Khan's haveli. And what he does is he takes this haveli on rent. He catches hold of Zainul Abidin, who is Arif, who is this one's nephew, Ghalib's nephew, and he manages to put together this mushaira. He holds it on a fortnightly basis. He has a mushaira, chota sa mushaira hai. It's not as if he can attract the great ustads or anything. So it does not have all these great people who Faridullah Beg projects as the people who attend this mushara. But what he does is the proceedings of that fortnightly mushaira are collected. There are some people who are actually sending in their things even by print, even by letter. And he's collecting these on a fortnightly basis, publishing them. As again, according to me, this is a very revolutionary way of thinking of a mushaira, as something that loses its original, the idea of a mushaira as an intimate gathering of poets who are discussing poetry and reciting their poems, as something that is eventually geared to a big audience, as these little pamphlets which will be published, which will be printed. Lithographic printing is really taking off at this time, so that is published. He does this in the 1840s. So these are the exciting things which are coming out of the Delhi College. They don't necessarily come out of things that are taught in the Delhi College. They come out of people who are already very well grounded, often in Farsi, the whole Farsi tradition of learning. The new things that are happening is Urdu is being taught as a language. It begins to be taught as a language. Then, one thing that we forget is the teaching of spoken tongues as a part of a curriculum is a very new thing. The English never taught English in their institutions. It was a language that you spoke. The languages that were taught were Greek and Latin and stuff. And यहाँ पे you studied Sanskrit and Farsi and Arabic in your institutions. Urdu तो आप बोलते हैं, हिंदी बोलते थे, हिंदी बोलते हैं आप. तो that is something that is beginning to happen. Urdu is being taught in a formal way because it also becomes the unrelated. It becomes the official language of the northwestern provinces in the 1830s. So it begins to be taught. So it is these people who are grounded in earlier traditions of learning, who have now, through the medium of either translations, but also through learning the English language, now come into contact with a lot of other repositories of knowledge, and that gives them the ability to move into different spheres, create new public spheres, but also to do work, address new audiences also. At the same time, I think we should not forget those revolutionary things that were happening, which were the contribution of people who didn't come out of the college. And I just wanted to mention these because very often it may be tempting to think that everything new and wonderful came out of the college only. And it didn't. And when I'm trying to say that the college was great not simply because of the fact that it was introducing Western learning, but also the fact that it continued this tradition, the older traditions also. That was important. You look at some people, I will talk about, say, Sayyid Ahmad Khan. People often, I've heard it said only very recently that Sayyid Ahmad Khan was from the Delhi College. No, he wasn't. He never attended the college. But people can be blamed for assuming that, because if you look at him and his preoccupations and his interests, he's in that period. Later, of course, we know him as an educationist, etc. But at that period, he is interested in obviously things which are of an older, he's grounded in older the educational system where he learns astronomy and he learns mathematics and all of that. He learns medicine also for a little while. But then he is also participating in new endeavors. He is becoming interested in, for instance, he writes a paper on the Jantar Mantar. He writes a paper on the Qutub Minar. He writes his great work on the monuments of Delhi, Asar-o-Sanadid, and he becomes a member of the Delhi Archaeological Society, which is founded in the 1840s. So these are people. The other person who's very involved in the Delhi Archaeological Society is Nawab Ziauddin Khan of Loharu. So these are all, it is a period of intellectual ferment, new intellectual preoccupations, new interests, and Delhi College plays a very important role in this, but its role is a complex one. And we should, when we think of these kind of things, the new public sphere, the new print culture, new areas of learning that you see coming in, we should not immediately think that this is colonial knowledge that is coming in. In the shaping of what this new learning is, these new styles of learning, new ways of teaching, all of this is also very grounded in efforts, whether you take Fazl Ali Khan's bequest to the college, which kept the Oriental College going, or you see the efforts of faculty such as Ramchandar, who does a lot to popularize the learning which is happening inside the college to a wider public through his popular writings, or the work of faculty or alumni who go on and do a lot of interesting things. You have also from this period, you have people like Zakaullah. You have now I'm having a senior moment. The guy who was very at Muhammad Hussain Azad. Muhammad Hussain Azad, the great literary figure, who questions a lot of the literary tradition later on. But a lot of that formative thing is happening over here. Muhammad Hussain Azad goes to Lahore, of course, where he talks about reforming Urdu, the traditional Urdu tradition, canonical tradition altogether. But it is in this space in Delhi at this particular time that it is all taking shape. Now, that Delhi College was destroyed in 1857. When the revolt of 1857 happened, it was seen by many, and I'm talking here of the soldiers who came in and the people of Delhi who rose up. That is another long story, but I will not go into it. But it is seen as, rather indiscriminately, I think, as a symbol of colonial rule. And unfortunately, at that point, it is completely looted. The building at that time was not the Ghaziuddin Madrasa. It had already moved to what is today known as the Darashikoh Library. In the 1840s, it had moved to the Darashikoh Library, and it was completely looted. Its libraries, its laboratories, its classrooms were completely destroyed. When it reopened after the revolt, it was a shadow of itself. It had no independence. It used to just prepare students for the degree, which was from Calcutta. And then in 1877, it was shut down. The Lahore College, the students went to Lahore College. It reopened later. And of course, in our modern period, we know that it was at some point renamed the Zakir Hussain College. So that is the story of the old Delhi College. A book has been written on it, Qadim Delhi College also. So that is the story of the Delhi College. So just my view on what the significance of it is. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Many new informations, especially about Karimuddin's one which you mentioned. There is a portrait of that Mushaira in Markaz-e-Noor. Because in 1983, the same Mushaira was staged by Delhi Urdu Academy. I played as Chobdar in that. And it was even organized at Shamsi Mahal,
Shamsi Talab.
Shamsi Talab, and many other places.
What did you do?
As I said,
You performed your duty as well?
yeah, that's why I was moderately interested now. Yeah, so and the text was also published from the same Mushaira. But thanks to you a lot. I now invite Mr. Shahid Amin Sahab to make his comment and observations.
Um, Thank you very much. Swapna, I mean, it's जिसको कहते हैं कि समंदर को पूजे में बंद कर दिया. You know, there's so much that is, you know, told us in one lecture, and there is so much written on Delhi College, and so many controversies and so on. In fact, there is a book on Delhi College edited by Margaret Pernew, in which there's a very interesting chapter by Swapna on Azurda. And there are several things about Azurda. In fact, when he's tried after 1837, and he's never nearly convicted. And then the whole issue revolves around whether when his house was attacked, who defended the house. And some say it was the Ghazis themselves. And then through various lawyers came in and created. Fabrication is that word for that. Fabrication. But in the lawyer, common sense is that. But we consider fabrication as completely untrue. So they play on that, and Azurda survives. There are some other things that are really very, very interesting, starting with the initial bequest and the way in which the initial bequest is actually tied with the operations of the East India Company. In fact, the initial bequest is in terms of government paper of the East India Company, and it's not a tally that is kept somewhere. And so it then is with the East India Company. It obviously must have made use of it in its own trade, and then it kind of appropriates it, and then provides another grant. So it's a very, very interesting situation where a kind of effort by quote-unquote natives, and especially of the gentry, to create a new system within the colonial period, because Delhi, as you know, is under the Mughals, under the British. Interesting, the Mughal emperor is then reduced to be called the Emperor of Delhi, the King of Delhi rather. Just imagine the kind of transition that takes place in 1857. That deliberately he's just called the King of Delhi. And in that post-1803 situation, to actually, for important intellectual from the northern part of India to actually invest in the company, by investing in the company paper, to start a college for rural language. I mean, that is a very, very major initiative. And the fact that the government then unveils it and then appropriates it for a kind of more broader purpose also says something about educational donations and so on and so forth. You raise the fund, and then the government comes in, and in one way or the other, it is then diverted. So the very foundation of the college and the earlier bequest are at that intersection of the colonial rule and its commercial investments. There are several other very, very interesting things that you have talked about. I won't take very long. It's about the role played by various students in different stages. Mohanlal Kashmiri, you say, and his visit to Afghanistan, and there's another story about how later on the gates of Somnath are sought to be brought back, and they are then discovered to be not the gates that Muhammad Ghazni took out from Somnath, but a product from 18th century Afghan carpentry, and so they now lie in the Agra fort. So that there is a way in which students of Delhi College create a kind of a new public sphere. It's not simply translations but the new public sphere, in the sense, you talked about languages being spoken and languages being taught. And you talked about the distinction between Bolna and Likhna. And spoken language is not what is taught. Taught is the classic. And in some ways, along with the classic teaching, there are ways of sociality, mushairas and so on. And Karimuddin's real novelty is actually organizing making a wider public sphere from a very, very secluded and almost an elitist institution like the mushaira, where you have to have certain etiquettes. There is a certain hierarchy. There is a certain way in which poets are put down, and the shama then moves. And to take that and make it into a print culture is to make available. It's a very, very major transition, which allows people who are outside the cloisters to actually participate. Now, these are some of the major achievements that I think that the college brings about. There are other debates about whether this is a renaissance or not, whether there's a rebirth or there's this really a translation, but that need not, bother us at the moment. But what I really appreciate and thank you for is this long period and picking up some of the salient features and bringing out again to life this Marhum College. I wish,
Marhum Delhi College.
yeah, I wish it didn't become again. And in the name of the college, the Delhi was incorporated rather than just Zakir Hussain College. Perhaps Zakir Hussain Delhi College would have been the fitting way in which to have the continuity. And then that's my, I think that would have been even better, but as it is, we have Delhi College at present, which is carrying on this tradition. There's this very strong Farsi teaching, which my friend who passed away did. There are historians like Ataullah who are really well versed in Farsi. And so that college continues, and it's...
It has become Zakir Hussain College.
No, it has become Zakir Hussain College.
Now Zakir Hussain Delhi
It's
College.
not called Zakir Hussain Delhi College.
Yes, Delhi is added now.
Now, okay.
Yes.
When was this?
About 7 or 8
Few all right, okay. No, normally, so I take my words back.
Okay.
Yeah.
And previously it was named Anglo-Arabic College also. You know? It was Delhi College. Now it became Anglo-Arabic College. And again Delhi College. And in 1975, it became under Zakir Hussain Trust. So the name was given Zakir Hussain College. But I am the student of this college. So we made effort that our previous name Delhi should be given.
No, that's right.
So it became Zakir Hussain Delhi College.
Dr. Zakir Hussain would not have appreciated the change. He was my vice chancellor.
Thanks a lot, sir. Mande istadani namaim as Rajana Muslim Janamagay Fariduddin Asfer. در باب واژه واجب را کار نمیم التماس.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Professor Chandrasekhar, Vice President of Professor Abidi Memorial Society, Dr. Swapna Liddle, Professor Shahid Amin, Mr. Shahid Mahdi, Professor Fatima Hussaini, and all of guests. Thank you very much and most welcome in Iran Culture House. Last night I told to Professor Fatima I only want to read the poetry And after your speech, I rather to read a poetry from Saadi in Arabic and Persian language. شعر عربی فارسی پیدا بکنم سعدی بخونیم بهتر هست. این شعر برای اساتید زبان فارسی و تقدیم میکنیم به همه اساتیدی که در دانشگاه دهلی و در همه دانشگاه‌های هند تلاش کردند. از برخی از اونها نام برده شد که برای حفظ زبان فارسی و زبان عربی در هند مجاهدت کردند، کوشش کردند، هزینه کردند. یک چند بیت از سعدی میخونم که یک مصرعش عربی هست، یک مصرع فارسی. سل المصانع ركبا تهیم في الفلوات، تو قدر آب چه دانی که در کنار فراتی. شبم به روی تو روز است و دیده ها به تو روشن، و این هجرت سواء حشیتی و غداتی. من آدمی به جمالت ندیدم و نشنیدم، اگر گلی به حقیقت عجین آب حیاتی. فکم تمرر عیشی و انت حامل شهد، جواب تلخ بدیع است از آن دهان نباتی. نه 5 روزه عمر است عشق روی تو ما را، نه 5 روزه عمر است عشق روی تو ما را. وجدت رائحة الود إن شممت رفاتي، وصفت كل ملیح كما يحب ويرضى. محامد تو چه گویم که ماورای صفاتی. اخاف منك و ارجو و استغیث و ادنو، که هم کمند بلایی و هم کلید نجاتی. ز چشم دوست فتادم به کامه دل دشمن، احبتی هجرونی کما تشاء عداتی. فراقنامه سعدی عجب که در تو نگیرد، فراقنامه سعدی عجب که در تو نگیرد. و ان شکوت الی الطیر نحن فی الوکنات. خب یه چند کلمه هم فارسی عرض بکنم و اون که یاد و خاطره مرحوم پروفسور عابدی رو در این جلسه گرامی می‌داریم. خداوند این دانشمند پرتلاش، این عاشق فرهنگ ایرانی و زبان فارسی رو غریق رحمت بداره. و حقیقت این است که ما در خانه فرهنگ هر وقت که به ما میفرمایند که برای ایشون میخواهیم بزرگداشتی بگیریم، نه به عنوان یک تکلیف بلکه به عنوان عشق و علاقه، به عنوان یک ابراز ارادت در خدمت هستیم و وظیفه خودمون میدونیم که یاد این مرد بزرگ رو گرامی بداریم و در کنار دوستان او و در کنار شاگردان او به این مرد بزرگ ادای احترام بکنیم. حکایت امروز ما شاید همین حکایت عشق و فراق هست نسبت بسیاری از اساتیدی که سالها برای حفظ زبان فارسی زحمت کشیدند و امروز هم بخشی از اونها، تعدادی از این اساتید بزرگ رو ما در میان خود نداریم و هم اون سوز و گداز و عشق و علاقه‌ای که شاید زمانی برای زبان فارسی وجود داشت، اون انجمن‌ها، اون جلسات، اون مشاعره ها که زمانی با عشق و علاقه اونها، گاهی میبینیم، ما امروز نگاه میکنیم میبینیم که شاید برای برپایی یک جلسه چقدر باید تلاش کرد و چقدر همه باید وقتهای پر شده خودشون رو با کارهای مختلف خلوت کنن تا بتونن که گرد هم جمع بشن. امیدواریم که باز به همت جوانها و با دعا و هدایت پیران طریق باز همه اون جمعها شکل بگیره، باز بازار زبان فارسی گرم بشه و امیدواریم که روز به روز بر رونق این محافل افزوده بشه. حالا آقای چندرشکر اگر خواستن میتونن یه خلاصه‌ای برای اونهایی که فارسی متوجه نمی شدن ترجمه کنن. حالا شرح شعر نمیخواد بکنن.
به نهایت ممنونم از اون تشکر. Respected cultural counselor Dr. Fariduddin Akhar expressed his thanks in fact to the foundation for organizing this lecture from here. He said they are happy to organize every time this kind of lectures, as it is also a tribute to our renowned late teacher, especially Professor Abidi. I also recall about a decade back from Markaz-e-Tahqiqat Research Center, 2 volumes in the name of Professor Abidi was released, published here, apart from many other volumes and which have his research papers. And he also mentioned that there were times when these kind of assemblies are full of students and the teachers. Now our younger generation has to find time to come and join these. I wish and I hope more people will come to gain informal type of knowledge from these lectures and addresses here. He again conveyed his thanks and desire that Persian will continue to be a link between Indian-Iranian cultural relations and more. And as we know, Persian is one of the subjects approved in national education policy, and perhaps due to that, still it is being considered as a classical language of India. بنده حالا از جناب آقای دکتر کرمان سلیمانی استادامی نمایم که اظهار نظر کنند.
سلام عرض میکنم خدمت دوستان عزیز. من دومین باری هست که لکچر در اینجا گوش میدم در خصوص احترام به استاد عابدی. سال گذشتم البته اینجا خدمتتون بودم. من میخوام از خانم سوپنا خیلی تشکر کنم که این لکچر امسال بسیار سودمند بود. حقیقتا من خودم خیلی بهره بردم. بسیار سپاسگزار از این لکچر سودمند. بازشناسی میراث فکری به تربیتی یک نهاد علمی در هند، در دهلی، که مرتبط با زبان فارسی هم بوده. من از صمیم قلب سپاسگزارم. این توفیق رو من داشتم که در ایران 2 بار میزبان استاد عابدی بودم در دوره حیاتشون و البته خب درک حضوری از ایشان دارم. فقط میتونم عرض کنم که در ایران به استاد عابدی به چشم یک استاد مسلم زبان فارسی نگاه میکنند به آنچه که ایشون در حوزه زبان فارسی انجام داده برای دانشمندان ایرانی هم بسیار بسیار قابل احترام هست. راستش رو بخواهید خب کم شده این تعداد آثاری که عزیزان هندی ما منتشر کنند و در ایران به چشم احترام نگاه کنند. در دوره معاصر استاد عابدی و آثارشون در زمره بهترین ها هست. نکته دیگر این که این سنت خوبی است که شما دایر کردید. ما در ایران کمتر این سنت رو داریم که به یادبود کسی یک لکچر علمی هر سال برگزار کنیم. این خیلی سنت خوبی است. از اون درس هایی است که ما باید از شما هندی ها یاد بگیریم. خیلی کار خوبی است، خیلی کار آسان و در عین حال بسیار سودمندی است و با سنت، با روش زندگی استاد عابدی هم همخوانه. خب این یک بخش شأن علمیشه، یک بخش شأن انسانیشه. این که دوست عزیز من پروفسور چندرشکر اینقدر با احترام یاد میکنند از استاد عابدی و مجموعه کسانی که اینجا محضر این مرد بزرگ رو درک کردن نشون میده. علاوه بر اینکه دانش بسیار بسیار قابل توجهی داشته، انسان نازنین و دوست داشتنی بوده و شاگردان خوبی تربیت کرده و رابطه انسانی که با شاگردانش داشته. اینها برای ما خیلی آموزنده است. خیلی خیلی سپاسگزارم باز هم از خانم دکتر سواپنا که خیلی لکچر سودمندی بود. فکر میکنم اگر هند قرار هست میراث خودش رو بازشناسی کنه، این نوع مطالعات بسیار سودمند هست. من بسیار آموختم. خیلی تشکر میکنم از این دوستان.
Dr. Karman Suleimani mentioned that this is the second lecture he attended, and from today's lecture he really got many inputs, especially about an institution which not only served for the cause of Persian but for cause of knowledge itself, and is more in fact grateful to this foundation and the tradition of we Indians that we have lectures in the name of our late teachers, which is not in tradition in Iran. And we take this kind of a lesson from our Indian friends that we should organize lecture series in the name of our great teachers. And he mentioned about Professor Abidi that he was a host of him in his 2 visits when he visited Iran. And in fact, he mentioned that in Iran, everyone looks at Professor Abidi, a very sincere and respected scholar. A large number of his works are published from Iran, and everyone know him, what kind of a dedication he had for Persian, and he produced number of good scholars. And about his, especially his behavior, that how human he was. And he again thanks to all of you, and especially today's speaker, that who is like revisiting the institutions which were born of the society's intellectual upcoming. Thanks a lot. I request President of the Society, Janab Shahid Mehdi Sahab, who would also like to present gifts to some of the important personalities of today's one. First, I request Janab Dr. Frida Sahab, to whom Janab Shahid Mehdi Sahab want to give a gift. Bandar Janab Ali Sadaminam. جناب شاهد مهدی جناب آقای دکتر کرمان سلیمانی صدا می نمایند.
Welcome to India.
Yeah, now just to the speaker, Swapna Liddle.
Thank you very much.
It's a privilege to meet you.
जनाब शाहिद अमीन साहब जी जी I request Janab Shahid Mehdi Sahab to speak on this occasion as the President of the Society.
First of all, I would like to express my joy at seeing the lecturer of this evening, because I've been reading about him with the privilege of meeting just now. I think there are two cities in India which have been most celebrated in literature. One is Lucknow and the other is Delhi. And both cities have the good luck of very eminent writers. The memories of the cities and the city and all the other aspects of it. For Lucknow, it is a definitive work by Sharan, Learning Sharan, Guzashta Lucknow, which covers all the aspects. But similarly, Delhi also has had the authors who have celebrated, and there's a lot of literature on the people of Delhi, the language of Delhi, the food of Delhi, etc. So in the whole country, these are the only two cities which have been so well celebrated in memoirs and in full, I should say, biographies. And you are one of the descendants of these authors who have been celebrating Delhi. I'm very happy that I've been reading about your articles, and I know your love for this city. And today I'm very happy to see you in 3 dimensions, sitting next to me. Now, you see, Amir son Abidi, he had a very special relationship with Iran Culture House. I think in his leisure time, most of the time he was spent here. I don't know if you knew him, if you were there or not. And he was a Darwish. He will bear me out because, and you will be surprised, he wrote his articles on this side of the paper. You see? So I don't know, he was so economical about the use of papers and all this. There are so many things which one could remember about him. And one thing is very personal which I would like to mention. His love for his village. This Gangoli. You see, this village has been celebrated by one of us cousins, Mosubala Rai, Adagaon. I don't know if you have read it. but it has been translated into English also. The feuding families of Bengali. Amir Bhai's love for Bengali, I would like to recall, and that shows that he was rooted there, and at the same time was a self-taught, I would say, scholar, because he was absolutely self-made person. You must be knowing much better.
Since I was 7, because he taught in St. Stephen's along with my father.
And very, I would say, he was a dervish. He would, if you see this kind of paper, he will write on this. And he will keep on doing this. I only wish that he had written more monographs, you see. Papers. Because it was so vast. And I don't think, and all his students really loved him. Because it was mutual. Bilqis, you will bear me out. So whenever I remember Amir Bhai, it's very sweet memories. And also, whatever little Persian I could say I've forgotten. After appearing for the IAS, I forgot. You see. But still, you see some kind of nodding acquaintance I try to maintain, especially through poetry. Well, I was it's a very rambling comment. We hope somebody who is presiding it function. But when it comes to Amir Bhai, I just can't restrain myself. We miss him very much. And I'm glad that Iran Culture House, where he spent most of his leisure time. If you wanted to meet him here. That is see. And I am very grateful to you for being a part of the series, and I hope all these things are published also. And I'm really very appreciative of the children of Amir Bhai, Suhail, Javed, who have been very, very meticulous, regular about this annual meet. And I hope that his children also, in future, continue to celebrate Amir Bhai, his scholarship and his relationship with the Iran Culture House. I just want, it's very difficult for me to sum up. In fact, I have written something which was published by the Ghalib Institute, but he was a unique person. Those kind of people are not made anymore. Chandrasekhar ji will hear me out. So thank you very much for giving this opportunity, for seeing in 3 dimensions somebody whom I have been reading very regularly, and I really greatly appreciate your love for Delhi. Because these are the only 2 cities which have been celebrated, Lucknow and Delhi. And in Delhi there is so much material. I hope there is some kind of an index of what has been written about Delhi. See, mostly in Urdu. So that with the passage of time, coming new generation, all these things will be gradually fade out. But it is for scholars like Shahid Amin to make something so that it lasts, so that it is transferred to the next generation also. No, I'm not talking about Amir Bhai, I'm talking of Delhi itself, because Delhi has changed. And you can't describe Delhi culture anymore. Can you?
दिल्ली जो एक शहर था आलम में इंतखाब
This has to be preserved, like any archaeological monument. Delhi's memories and all that. And I'm glad that this generation also is celebrating Delhi, communicating to the younger generation, etc. And the lazy researchers like Shahid Amin should also do something about it. He has always underestimated his
Just leave it at that. His
gut. Well, thank you very much. I'm privileged to be here, and I'm always here every year. And it is the spirit of a nearby which is keeping all of us here together. Sweet memories, nice functions. Every year some new scholar, and especially I would like to thank you because we are all admiring. Every generation has a lover of Delhi, and you are the latest one. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Before I ask our Madam Bilkis Fatima Hossaini, Honorary Secretary of this Trust, I am repeating the words of Dr. Kairman Suleimani here. Since the lecture has a lot of inputs about Persian too, with the permission of the Trust, it will be translated into Persian to be published in the magazine being brought out by this center. I hope you will permit it. And English version will be published definitely by the Trust, which we do always. So with this, again I thank Tashakkur और इफ्तिखार मेरे से बड़ा बंदे के इन कॉलर अंजाम करना. Task is assigned to me to translate it. Madam Hussain, please.
سلام زیاده اول من به فارسی بگویم با اجازه بزرگ استاد بزرگ خودم پروفسور شهید مهدی صاحب و شهید امین صاحب ما که اینجا شهیدین داریم الان شهیدین و با اجازه جناب علی رئیسان محترم من واقعا افتخار دارم که ما اینجا جمع بشیم هر سال با این کارهایی که خیلی سخت بوده جمع کردن به مردم و اینجا این کار را شروع کردن. باوجود این همیشه خانه فرهنگ ما رو خیلی تشویق میکند و ما اینجا چرا میایم. من سال گذشته همین حرفها رو گفته بودم که پروفسور عابدی با فارسی عشق و علاقه داشت. یعنی این یک یعنی آدم غیر معمولی بوده، این نابغه بوده که همیشه یعنی وقتی که از این جهان به درود گفت و رفت از اینجا ما میبینیم که فقط یه ماه بود که اون مطالعه کم کرده. این نمیتونم بگم که مطالعه نکرد، خیلی کم مطالعه کرد ولی فقط یک ماه بوده. تمام عمر هر موقع که شبها بیدار میشد یعنی لازم نبود که چه وقت چراغ را روشن میکرد و مطالعه میکرد، بعدا میخوابید. یعنی این زندگانی بود. بعد از بازنشسته شدن همیشه اینجا نور مایکروفیلم می اومد، در کتابخانه دهلی میرفت و اونجا و این که یه عادی بوده. علاوه بر این هر موقع که جایی میرفت پروفسور عابدی در روستاها، در دهکده ها، هر جا که میرفت، چون بالعموم در هندوستان آنهایی که اشراف بودن کتابخونه داشتن، اون مخصوصا میرفت یعنی اجنبی و بیگانه هر کس که باشه میرفت خودش را معرفی میکرد و میپرسید که کتابخونه کجاست. من میخوام کتابخونه شما را ببینم و اینطور یعنی این واقعا عشق فرهادی داشت، یعنی کوکنی میکرد، هر جایی که میرفت از اونجا کتابها را جمع میکرد، میدید و مقاله مینوشت. به این صورت من واقعا افتخار دارم که خانه فرهنگ همیشه ما رو کمک میکنه و ما اینجا فقط برای ثابت کردن و ادامه داشتن اون روابط عشقی و الهی بسور آبدی است که ما میخواهیم که این برنامه رو همیشه اینجا برگزار میکنیم. وگرنه ما میتونیم هر جایی که باشه ولی اگه از اینجا دور میشیم از ایران و فارسی زبان احساس میکنیم که ما دور میشیم. ما نمیخواهیم که این رابطه روحی استاد رو ما قطع کنیم. خیلی جناب علی من تشکر میکنم، سپاسگزارم، از بون دندان سپاسگزارم که مرکز تحقیقات و رهزن محترم همیشه با ما هستند و این کار را انجام میدهند. خیلی ممنون از شماها. خانم سوپنا که اینقدر بهترین یه مقاله رو خوندن، یعنی سخنرانی کردن که من خودم در اون هوای قدیمی که من در کتابها خونده بودم، خانم این همه چیزها را ارائه دادن، یک تصویر مجسم اون اداره نهاد علمی رو پیش ما ارائه دادن. من واقعا خیلی میں آپ کی بہت شکر گزار ہوں کہ آپ نے اتنا اچھا لیکچر دیا اور اس لیکچر سے ہم لوگوں کو استفادہ ہوا. اور وہ لوگ جو دلی کالج سے رابطہ رکھتے ہیں ان کو چاہیے کہ وہ دلی کالج کو سمجھیں اور پڑھیں اور اس کے بعد وہی ہوا وہی فضا جو ہے اس کو قائم رکھیں جو ہمیں صحابائی کے دور میں ملتی ہے. یعنی اور آپ لوگوں کو تو معلوم ہی ہے کہ غالب آئے تھے پہلے فارسی پڑھانے کے لیے، لیکن غالب کو وہ پروٹوکول نہیں ملا تو وہ واپس چلے گئے کہ میں یہاں نہیں ہوں. ہاں ان کو وہ پروٹوکول جو وہ چاہتے تھے کہ وہ آئے وہ نہیں ملا، وہ واپس چلے گئے. اور فارسی کا پہلا استاد امام بخش صاحبائی ہے. تو امام بخش صاحبائی آج ہمارے ہر نوجوان کو ان اساتذہ کو جو دلی کالج کے اساتذہ تھے ان کو اپنی نظر میں رکھنا چاہیے. اور آج کا ہر نیا استاد جو ہے وہ امام بخش صاحبائی بننا چاہیے اس کو. اگر ایسے نہیں بنیں گے تو ہماری فارسی جو ہے وہ دھیرے دھیرے زوال کی طرف چلی جائے گی. ہمیں زوال کی طرف نہیں جانے دینا ہے، بہت محنت کرنے کی ضرورت ہے. ہم کیوں پیچھے ہو جاتے ہیں؟ اس لیے کہ ہم اہل مطالعہ نہیں. میں بہت شکر گزار ہوں آپ سب لوگوں کی اور ان تمام مہمانوں کی جو یہاں تشریف لائے ہیں. ان سب کی شکر گزار ہوں کہ انہوں نے آنے کے بعد اس بزم کو رونق بخشی اور ہمیں اس لائق سمجھا کہ ہم لوگ یہاں جمع ہوں اور اتنے بزرگ اساتذہ کا وہ یاد کریں. یاد اس لیے کرنا ہے کہ ہمیں اپنے آپ کو اس مقام پر بھی پہنچانے کی کوشش کرنی چاہیے جس مقام سے ہم نے علم و ادب سیکھا ہے. کہ پروفیسر عابدی نے ہمیں کس انداز سے وہ کہتے یہ تھے ایک لڑکیوں کے لیے میں کہ وہ یہ کہتے تھے کہ اگر لڑکیاں شادی کے بعد نہیں پڑھ پاتی ہیں تو ان کو چاہیے وہ پی ایچ ڈی کر لیں اور پی ایچ ڈی کرنے کے بعد گھر بیٹھ کر کے کسی کتاب کی تصحیح کریں تاکہ وہ ہمارے وہ نسخے لائبریریوں میں بسکٹ کی طرح ٹوٹ رہے ہیں ان نسخوں کو دوبارہ زندہ کر سکیں. انہوں نے کہا مرد تو آ جائیں گے لیکن ہماری لڑکیوں کی شادیاں ہو جاتی ہیں، وہ گھروں میں بیٹھ جاتی ہیں. تو ان کو یہ چاہیے کہ وہ پی ایچ ڈی کریں، اچھے سے پڑھائی کریں اور نسخوں کی تصحیح کا کام کریں تاکہ وہ نسخے زندہ رہیں. یہ ان کی تعلیمات تھیں اور ان کی تعلیمات کے تحت ہم لوگوں کو چاہیے کہ اپنے آپ کو آگے بڑھائیں. میں بہت شکر گزار ہوں ان تمام اصحاب کی، ان تمام شاگردوں کی، ان تمام دوستوں اور اساتذہ کی جو اس بزم میں آئے تشریف لائے، اور آپ سب کی شکر گزار ہوں. اور ہمارے شاہد امین صاحب کے ان کے ساتھ جو ایک رشتہ تھا عابدی خاندان کا، وہ ایک ایسا رشتہ تھا کہ گھریلو رشتہ تھا بالکل. اور آج بھی یہ رشتہ قائم و دائم ہے اور اسی طرح قائم و دائم رہنا چاہیے. آپ کا بہت بہت شکریہ اور آپ میں چچا کے لیے کیا کہوں، دست بستہ ہوں کہ آپ ہمیشہ اس کو رونق بخشتے ہیں. شیخر صاحب یہ علمی کا وشے آج پروفیسر عابدی کا کہ یہ وہ اسٹوڈنٹ ہیں جنہوں نے اپنے آپ کو بھی اس مقام پر پہنچانے کی پوری کوشش کی. خدا عالم ان کو سلامت رکھے. افسوس ہے کہ اس بزم میں اس سال ہمارے 2 اساتذہ نہیں ہیں جنہوں نے ہمیشہ پروفیسر عابدی کے ساتھ اپنی زندگی گزاری اور دونوں ایک دوسرے کے ساتھ یعنی پروفیسر عابدی اور محمود فیاض صاحب اور ہمارے مرحوم یوسف صاحب کے ساتھ ایک بہت دلی رشتہ تھا جس کے ختم ہونے کا افسوس ہے. خدا عالم ان لوگوں کو خلیق رحمت کرے اور یہ بزم ہمیشہ بار رونق رہے. بہت بہت شکریہ.
ہم نہ ہوں گے کوئی ہمسا ہوگا.
کوئی حصہ ہوگا.
دائم آباد رہے گی دنیا. ہم نہ ہوں گے
کوئی ہمسا ہو گیا.
Thank you. Thank you. میں تو 7 سال سے آخری سال ہوں امین صاحب سینسٹیفل میں دوسری تو جائیں کیسے پلاننگ میں بس فار دا بس.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.